Everyone hates being steamrolled on World of Tanks, and today's video is going to showcase some of the most overpowered, horrific and game-breaking tanks within World of Tanks for anyone that's playing the various different tiers throughout the game. Of course, let me know some of the tanks that you really do fear the most and find the most disgusting within the game, and today we're going to showcase 5. There will be multiple different videos on these sort of topics where we're looking through some of the most horrific tanks, so I'll feature some of your comments, so make sure that you are commenting down below what you think of the worst and most overpowered and just different kind of concepts that we can do these videos on. Kicking it off with a bang, we have of course got the Panzer V4, the tier 5 German heavy, medium, light tank destroyer, ramming heavy. Yeah, this is basically a tank that is just completely overpowered. It's basically a tier 6 down at tier 5 with super speed, and the speed in fact it's a faster tank than the medium tank, of which it's based upon being the Panther Hull, but can do 66 kilometers an hour. So actually you can ram Panthers for more damage than you'll take in this thing, which is supposedly 2 tiers lower, and this tank just in general is one of the most overpowered tier for tier tanks within the game, but there's plenty of others that we can kind of call upon. We're going to showcase both premiums and standard tech tree tanks within this. So let's move on to the next one. Don't worry, because if you thought the Panzer V4 was overpowered, in fact this tank right here, the Hellcat 105, is quite possibly, if you're a skilled player, one of the most overpowered, most obnoxious tanks that you can actually get within the game that will just demolish the opponents that you're coming up against. And it actually is genuinely one of the tanks that I feel like just Wargaming got completely wrong. It's completely pay to win. You have to pay for the tank itself, and then when you're playing it you have to pay for the premium rounds, which are literally better in every single way. So you, instead of having 165mm of penetration with the standard rounds, when you load the premium you get extra penetration, you get extra damage as well, and you're getting less top speed of the ammunition, but it's literally like 50 meters a second, so it's not like you're losing like a big percentage. It's only something like 10% of the speed, less than 10% of the speed. It's like 5% actually, so yeah, it's literally no difference, but you're dealing like an extra 10% more damage, and you've also got an extra like 25% more pen. So there's literally no reason you'd fire the standard rounds, and there's no point in firing HE when you could do 60 less damage with your premium rounds, and they're going to be able to pen the majority of the time. This tank is just one that Wargaming got completely wrong. It goes 65 kilometers an hour. It has a fantastic reload. Its DPM, I believe, is just insane in the game, and if you haven't played the Hellcat 105 or you don't own it, I would 100% recommend you get your hands on this tank, because it just demolishes. You can see here a DPM of 2100 for a tier 6 tank destroyer slash light tank slash medium tank slash just everything that this tank is. So yeah, that is like tier 9 DPM on a tier 6, and it certainly packs out that damage really easily, because 208mm of penetration, that's more than enough to go through every single tier 6 within the game, straight through the front of them. And you can see here by just the statistics of the vehicle, if we go down to it, might take a little bit of time, but yeah, the amount of like percent wins that we've got in the Hellcat 105, 78% wins, averaging 2,266 damage in this tier 6 tank. That's more than the standard B, which is a tier 9, or literally equivalent of that. So you can pretty much make of that what you want. This tank is just disgusting, and really is one of the tanks that I think just Wargaming got completely wrong, and it is genuinely a tier 6 that just overperforms in every regard, especially if you know what you're doing and you're not like a complete bot. And even if you are, like the majority of the time, you'll still be able to beat most of the opponents, or at least deal your hit points worth of damage and get that fire for effect. personally within the game, this tank right here, the T-34-85M, the Rudy, the T-34-88, which is a similar sort of tank, they are all tanks that I feel like are just superb within the game, and they just deal so much damage in such a short period of time, and they just have everything that you want from a tier 6. The DPM of them makes them really fun to play, and you're actually able to do so much damage so quickly. It's 2,500 DPM on a tier 6 medium, means that this is genuinely getting up there with like tier 9 mediums in terms of the amount of damage that you can do if you can consistently hit the opponents that you're coming up against. And with the penetration values and the standard penetration, you pretty much go through most things that you're going to be coming up against, even if they are tier 8. So yeah, this means that these tanks are just fantastic and definitely an underrated one, and if you can play these right, you can break through the opposition and really make it count. Quite possibly one of the most impossible tanks to dig out of a hole, and just ones that will annoy you to hell. The SU-130PM is just one of those that just sticks in the back of your mind every single time you see one in the enemy team, and that's because they can pack a punch with 520 alpha damage, and that consistently will pen you nearly every single time. If you're playing a tier 8, you're getting penned by this, whether it hits you in the front, in the side. Unless it's hitting at a ridiculous angle, this thing is penning you. And if they load premium, well, that's just good night. With 320mm of penetration on the premium rounds, it's literally going through you, no matter, even at tier 10, like in an E100, if you're angling the turret, often this thing will probably still be able to go through if it manages to catch you in their kind of most unangled place. So is where I think that this tank, just having that alpha, having that penetration, and having the speed of the tank as well, and the fact that it is quite undetectable, 253 meters of still concealment here, meaning that yeah, you're going to be able to still remain undetected for the majority of time. It's not like you're a gigantic kind of box that actually gets spotted. You're just a gigantic kind of cumbersome like pack animal that just loads rounds into opponents. And because you have a pretty decent gun arc on this thing, you don't really have to move your actual hull armor, so you don't bloom out your still concealment, which means that you can remain undetected for a long period of time. And if you add on camo, you can probably get that value down even further, and it just makes this tank super hard to come up against, because you know it's going to be reloading in about like 8 seconds or something with all of the perks, if it's got the reload perks on it. You can see here 11.5 second reload. I don't know if I've got the advanced loader on there, and I haven't got a crew in it, so yeah, it's probably about 9 and a bit seconds to be able to do 520 alpha, bringing that total DPM probably in the region of about like 3,000 DPM. With a tank that packs this much of a punch, means that the effective DPM is really high, and you're going to be able to have some utterly devastating games in this tank. One tank that just demolishes opponents within the game and just breaks your hit points is the Iron Rain, the Borsig Waffentrager with the autoloader, because of course, why would you not make an autoloading version of the Borsig with the 490 alpha damage, meaning that the total clip potential of this tank, I believe, is what, 1470 alpha damage with a tier 8 tank destroyer. And although the kind of time between shells is quite long, being 2.7 seconds, which can come down, I believe, with ventilation. Well, no, it can't, because it's an open top tank, but if you have then the rapid loading, etc., and the perks that you can put on in terms of your like skills, then yeah, you'll be able to kind of bring that down even further. And also the reload will come down considerably, meaning that yeah, you can get the DPM up a little bit from where it is currently, but not massively, because it's an autoloader. You can't get the advanced loader or loading equipment, but it means that then you can just dump all of your stuff into camo, which makes this tank like invisible within the game, and also into your view range, so you can actually spot opponents. So yeah, this thing relies heavily on just being a sneaky kind of influence, and unfortunately I don't actually own it within the game, but I have played it before. But yeah, this tank is just once I've played against it, you know, you've probably played against one too, and if you've been caught out in the open by this thing, tracked, double tracked, and just, yeah, it doesn't take long for all of your hit points to disappear, and when you've got 1470 alpha, you can pretty much take out the majority of tier 8 tanks from full health with the Iron Rain. So it's all about just pinpointing your accuracy, and because the accuracy of this thing isn't even terrible, 0.37, you can really dish out that damage consistently to your opponents. So yeah, just another kind of game-breaking thing that Wargaming just thought apparently was okay within the game. It's not necessarily a super overpowered, well, it kind of is, but it's not like to the point where like this tank cannot be it's like got everything, but the fact it can just literally like take out the majority of every single tank that is going to come up against hit points makes it a little bit broken, not necessarily overpowered, but yeah, this tank is just horrible, and definitely one that I think everyone should probably own, and if it comes on sale anytime soon, I will be bagging this one up, hopefully, if I have the gold on my account at that time to purchase it. The list could go on, but we're not going to go on any further. This will be the final one, and it is of course the Tortoise. You know, there are plenty of tanks we can look at, and of course let me know in the comment section down below, and let everyone else know other tanks that are just broken in your opinion, because these are only the ones that I've thought about off the top of my head. I'm sure there are plenty of others, and we can obviously debate that in the comment section, but yeah, let's talk about the Tortoise here before the video ends, and it is of course because this thing has unbelievable DPM, and if you catch someone out with this, it is just game over every single day of the week, especially if you load use the 20 pounder that you can get on this tank. There are multiple guns. You can either go with the 120, which has 12 rounds a minute with 400 hit points worth of damage, so you've got effectively a 4,800 DPM with the Tortoise, I think, off the top of my head doing the maths. If it's 12 rounds a minute with 400 alpha, yep, about 4,860 DPM, something like that. Yeah, it's just unbelievable anyway, because wow, you basically reloading every like 5 seconds to do 400 alpha. Boy, that is just disgusting. And of course the accuracy is perfect as well, 0.27. It's not even like you sacrifice too much with this tank. So yeah, you are basically a walking, talking DPM pool. And because the tank isn't actually as slow as it once was, and if you put on the speed boost equipment that we've got on console in the form of the advanced powertrain and traction system, you can get the speed of this up to 30 kilometers an hour consistently throughout the terrains. And if you then put on your commander perks that boost up that as well, things that I haven't actually got on myself, but you could potentially have things like clutch braking just to help with the speed of turning and stuff like that, whilst also then having off-road driving, which increases the handling on soft terrain, and that's just going to help you out even more. And there's plenty of other things that you can go with this tank to just make it a little bit easier. And of course you could go with the reduction in like your arty shells from the spool liner or something that you could put on the tank, but ultimately the Tortoise is just one of those tanks that doesn't care. It's got buffed armor recently, which means that you can just roll into people, and the whole tank line is just so fun to play. And I thought, oh, these are going to be boring tanks where you're literally just like so slow and you're not able to get anywhere, but trust me, when you find someone, you pin them down and you're just continuously racking up damage against them. There's nothing really better than this kind of tank within the game, and I've actually found some of my best games where you're just like, oh well, I'm just going to go because my team is being boring, they're just sitting back and like trading on a corner. But with the Tortoise you can just roll in and be like, well, I'm going to take a couple of hits, but I'm going to dish out a hell of a lot more damage than they're going to be able to dish out to me in the same period of time, and often that actually leads to you winning the flank, and then you can go forward and flank round to opponents that maybe weren't expecting you to get there, and that way you kind of limit the negatives of the kind of mobility of the tank, just because you're like a wedge to be able to just drive it through the opponent. So yeah, the whole tank line fantastic, but the Tortoise in particular having that DPM is just insane, and I really do recommend anyone trying out this tank and any of the tanks within this video. Of course, let me know your thoughts on all of these. Did I go wrong with some of them? Do you think that some of them aren't even that bad? But yeah, definitely the ones I've mentioned I think are pretty game breaking within World of Tanks console. Let me know any different, and of course come back and check out some gameplay of the Tortoise coming soon on the channel. Goodbye.